Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We have special guest Alisha here. And Alisha and I actually met on TikTok, which is cool because she has a platform that talks about the cult slash religion she was raised in and her experiences within that. And so her and I bonded over that. And I'm just excited that we were able to connect. And Susie and I are excited to jump into the conversation with Alisha today. So without further ado, welcome, Alisha.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's kismet. I was emailing a different podcast because there's a podcast that I came across and it was called Was I in a Cult? And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I would love to connect with you guys. Sent them this email. They're actually coming to my town to an event that I'll be attending. So I'm stoked. Got them an email, closed my mail app, and then opened TikTok, and it was like, do you want to see this live? And I was like, unholy. I was like, what is this? And I was like, these are my people. I got
Yes, I love it.
casual
That's awesome.
evening.
I've heard of that. And the was I in a cult? So did they ever respond back? Have you
They
heard from
haven't
them?
responded back. I'm going to try reaching out again. They're going to do a live recording at an event that I'm attending in 3 weeks. So I'm really excited to, at least if nothing else, just watch the recording.
Wow.
But if I can connect with them, I would be really stoked.
So these people on a podcast go around the country and do these live shows like this.
Yeah.
Jenny, that would be my dream.
I think
Oh
our
my gosh,
first
that'd be so
live,
cool.
I
Yes.
think our first live needs to be maybe on a Caribbean cruise. I don't know.
I know.
Just saying.
It's my
It's,
dream.
I mean, it's crazy. It's in the event I'm going to is in Napa. It feels like a mini like Sundance or something like that. It's Stream Fest. So it's for podcasters and things like that. Like it was only $150 for 2 or 3 days full of events and live podcast viewings and open bar.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, Susie, next year we're going to that with David.
Yeah, we totally are. That sounds like so much fun.
23 days if you want to come.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. We're way on the other side of the country, both of us, though. Next time, though, that reminds me of a Comic Con or those
Yeah,
type of.
yeah, that's what it feels like.
Oh, I love it. Wow. Are you going to try to go live while you're there and
We'll
share
see.
your,
We'll
yeah.
see how it goes. I don't know. I'm very curious how this is going to go. I don't know if you've ever heard of Bottle Rock, but it's across the
Mhm.
street where Bottle Rock happens, which is like the Napa version of Coachella. And I've attended and worked at Bottle Rock a couple times, and that is just insane. There's so many people in Napa. It's a literal valley. We're just a little tiny bowl, and there's no room for all these people that they're bringing in. So it gets hectic. It gets wild, but it's fun. It'll be a good time, I'm sure.
I love it. I love that you're like so connected with this community. How long have you been like sharing your story and really putting yourself out there? I love when people do this and I love hearing their stories, so I can't wait.
I think that's a funny part of my story. So I've spent 9 years, and like my little like catchphrase or like tagline is, "Hi, my name's Alisha. I spent 9 years in a super culty church, and I'm spilling the Kool-Aid." So
Love
spilling
it.
the Kool-Aid is the name of what I hope to eventually be a book and a podcast, an E True Hollywood story. If I
Right.
could make millions off of these people who abused me for 9 years, I wouldn't complain.
And I think that's a really great give and take for probably the torture they put you through. Although, and the money, gosh, money's so crazy.
And
Mhm.
I make jokes that I want to get rich and famous off this, but truly my heart behind spilling the Kool-Aid is that I want to bring awareness to people who are in this area and may attend that church because it is still thriving. I want to help people who have been through this heal and see what my journey was. And then third, I really want to create a avenue where people who are still in ministry and want to prevent their churchgoers from experiencing what I experienced by educating themselves and by understanding, hey, these things that I've been taught over these, because so much of it is handed down. So much of it is like generational. This is what my grandpa did, and that's what my dad did. So I'm doing the same thing. How about you don't? How about you grow and expand as a person? You still want to be a Christian? Great, do it. But don't abuse people along the way. And I want to create an avenue where I can tell my stories, and these people that I genuinely believe probably meant well. This is not how you should be discipling people.
Mhm.
Oh, I
So
love that.
yeah, so in the midst of all that, to answer your question, I started speaking out probably within a couple years, like a year or two of me actually being fired from the church. And I started with a couple blog posts.
Wait, did they call it fired from the church?
I was on staff. I was a licensed
Okay.
minister. I was on staff. I led a ministry. And I actually have a video on my TikTok, and I can email you some screenshots of the day that I was removed from all my ministries because, and I can get into that whole story. It's so crazy. But I was fired via text message after 9 years of being a part of this church. And I was only 22 years old, almost, I think I was about to turn 22 when I was actually fired. And I had been one of the youngest women, one of the youngest people, especially women, to be a ministry leader at this church. Especially we, like I said, it's a Pentecostal background. But we were the cool hip church, and we had a lot of women in leadership. We had a lot of women pastors and things like that. The women really were like the heart of the church. Looking back now, it's because they were manipulated in
Mhm.
giving so much of service. And there was a lot of husbands that were like, this doesn't seem right. And the wives were like, shut up, we're going to church. And that's how they filled the seats.
Okay,
Oh,
interesting. So how
I
old were you when you got into this?
I was in church since I was little. Yeah, I would go with my grandma's. And then I went to church with my mom and my stepdad starting in, I was like second grade, I think, second or third grade. And the reason that they got into church was because my stepdad was in a custody battle for his young daughter. She was only a year and a half, maybe 2 years old. And the attorney said, listen, if you want to win this, you need to go and turn your life around. He said, go join a church, get some people to back you up and say that you have changed your life, and have them be your character witness. That's the only way you're going to get custody of your daughter. So
wow.
he joined a church. We were there for a few years. There was a falling out with a couple pastors, and they split off. So then we were in search of a new church. We ended up at a tiny congregation. Our family joined and we doubled the congregation. So we're in this little church in Napa. We were there for a few years, and I was the only person in my age range. So I didn't really feel like I belonged. There was a lot of depression when I was like in my middle school angsty days. And I just really wholeheartedly wanted to be in ministry, and I wanted to live my entire life in the church world. And
That's so
that's
nice.
all I wanted. I just wanted to
Oh,
be I wanted to be a youth pastor, and I wanted to do everything. I was like in third grade. I was like, this is all I want for my life. Fourth grade, I was like, this is what I want to do.
that's
So
cute.
I really wanted to get involved. I started struggling with some depression because I felt so left out there. And the popular crowd was like the pastor's kids, and they were just very unkind to me. So
Mm.
I just felt really, I don't know, like I felt depleted. I felt like I couldn't get out of this church what I was looking for. And the pastor of our church would connect with his brother, who was a pastor of another church. And that pastor would put on summer camp and winter camps. And we would
Uh-huh.
attend those camps every year. So as we're attending those camps, I got really interested in the way that they did ministry because everything was so much cooler. Like that ministry was like they had the big band and they had lights and they did like human videos. I don't know if you guys in the churches you went to, we had human videos where people would put on a song and act it out on stage. I thought that was the coolest thing. It was like a live music video, and that's how we would spread the gospel. It's very theatrical. So I just thought this church was so cool. And then as I'm getting to like eighth grade, almost ninth grade, I was like, I feel so left out in my youth group. I'm not getting what I want. I'm not like getting into leadership the way I want to. The people are mean to me. I'm depressed, and I want to join another church that's more ready for me, basically. They're more ready for my intensity because I've always been a very intense person. And I convinced my mom and my stepdad to move an hour and a half away from Napa to Sacramento so I could start attending that church and join a ministry program in high school.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I'm so impressed at your like not just passion, but perseverance. That is incredible.
The church I moved to was the one that ended up being the cult.
Gosh.
It was great in a sense, and I think what is meant to happen will happen, but it's interesting. They found that vulnerability of me feeling very left out,
Yeah.
and the senior pastor of the church who ran these camps bonded with me very young, and I was 11, 12 years old, and he was like, "Oh, you're so cool. You obviously really love God. You're going to be in ministry." And he would always be like, "When are you going to come to my church instead of my brother's?" And it was just like this like joking rivalry between the brothers of who was going to be the one who got me to be a famous minister, because everyone said, "We know you're going to be a famous minister. We know you're going to preach around the world. So which of the brothers is going to be able to like capitalize on saying I did that?"
Wow, oh my goodness.
And I was in a Christmas play one year, and the brother was visiting our church in Napa, and he was like, "Are you coming to winter camp?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't think I can." He's, "What's it going to take to get you there?" And I was like, "Maybe if you get me a code red." And I started like negotiating with him. I'm a Scorpio. I'm sly. I'm like, what are you going to give me? Because clearly I'm the one you want there. That's always been my personality, even when I was like 12, 13 years old. So I was like, "You need to give me a code red." And he's like, "I'll get you a whole 6-pack or 12-pack of code red. I'll get you a whole 2-liter if you come." And then he ended up taking like $50 off the price of the camp, and I ended up going. And that was when I was like, I need to be at this church. That following summer, my stepdad broke his neck, and Napa is extremely expensive to live in. So we lost our home and our construction business because he broke his neck in a car accident. So it was going to be cheaper to move. We were already going to lose our house. We're like, if we're going to move, we have to find an apartment anyways. We might as well just go there. So we started the transition into living there in fall of 2006. So that's how I ended up joining that church. And there's a discipleship program for like college age students called Master's Commission. It's affiliated with Assemblies of God churches. You spend 9 months in a discipleship program, a college age discipleship program. You live on site, and you're like basically just living your whole life in ministry. They had a youth version of that at Church of the Harvest where I moved to, and I wanted to join that. So that was like the big draw for me, is that I could join Master's Commission even as a 13-year-old. And that was like, I'm sold. Let's go. Let's do it. And I did.
Oh my gosh. I love this intensity that you have like for what you want to do. And then as a mom for with my kids where I wish sometimes they could be this passionate about something so good. Like your heart was in the right place. The place that you ended up, that's not your fault of that. It was a bad place. But I love that you're spilling Kool-Aid now because it's literally like you're doing away with the bad parts and hopefully keeping the good from these experiences that you learned. It's so amazing.
I think that looking back on it now, everyone knew very early on that I was headstrong, and my nickname was Firecracker and Ace, and I was going to do big things. And the pastor in Church of the Harvest, his name is Dan. He saw that, and on one hand, he wanted to invest in that. On the other hand, he saw the vulnerability of me feeling alone and feeling like I needed someone to mentor me, and he capitalized on that.
Yes,
Um,
I was hoping you were going to use that word because it is
it's
the almost the
exactly
exact opposite of each other. Invest and then really care for a person for what they want to do and then capitalize for what he wants to do.
Mhm.
Um,
my parents separated when I was very young, before my mom and stepdad obviously met. So when I came to this church, I was the girl from Napa, which is like the yuppie town. Everyone there has money. And Citrus Heights, where Church of the Harvest is, known for being ghetto. And they did the two things that, like, the two pillars that church like really relies on is outreach and discipleship. So outreach is literally so many homeless people would come to our church, and we had homeless ministries, and we had church on the street where we would just bring a mobile like church service onto this like sidewalk, and we would hand out food. They were connected with other organizations like Home Start, where there was people that they were in these like literal halfway houses and homes for people trying to get off the street. We would go and connect with them. We would donate food. We would help them with other resources. A lot of vulnerable people coming off of drugs or just down on their luck, whatever it was, were coming into our church. That was a huge part of our congregation. And then the other half being discipleship is they would take people who want to make their lives better, and then they would pour into them, train them, and disciple them to be in ministry or to give their life fully to God and fully to being a churchgoer. And those things really do go hand in hand, because all these people who are coming off the street, they want to make their life better. They would come and do discipleship. So then they're paying money to be in these programs. And they had discipleship programs for kids, for teenagers, for adults, like college age. Some of them were like, oh, you just had to show up to youth group on Thursdays and help stack chairs. Other ones were you move into student housing, you're not allowed to have a job, you only have one day off a week. And that was the type of programs I eventually went into. And that's when things went from, oh, I'm just in this church, to I'm getting more involved. And then things went from I'm in a church to I'm in a cult. So
Yeah.
like this church is still going. And if you attend service, you're not in a cult environment. There's nothing too crazy. It's your run-of-the-mill Pentecostal church where there's speaking in tongues and whatnot, but nothing like what I was experienced behind the scenes. But when you get
Yeah.
into those discipleship programs and you get into those staff positions, that's when things get haywire. That's when things
Yeah.
way, way beyond what is biblical. It goes beyond what is ethical, and it's insane. But that
Yeah.
transition from like, oh, I attended this church because they would pour into me and I wanted to be in ministry. And then when I did the things that I needed to do to get into ministry is when I was like, oh, I'm in way over my head.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're about what age at this point you're getting into ministry? Like 13, 14, 15?
I moved there to join Youth Masters Commission, which is a youth version of the 9-month discipleship program, because one of the girls that I went to youth group with, that she honestly used to be really mean to me as soon as she got to be friends with the pastor's daughter. She was going to this master's commission, the full-time program, and I was going into my freshman year in high school. So she went there and I followed her. So I joined Master's Commission so that I could like still be friends with her and hang out with her. And she was like, "Oh, you're like my little sister." All of a sudden, now that she was no longer popular, now she's being friends with me again. And she's one of those like mean girls. So she got me to come in and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna like partially mentor you." And I started getting involved in the Master's Commission like the beginning of my freshman year of high school. And my dad still lived in Napa. My mom lived in Sacramento. So I started doing independent studies through my high school so that I could live in both cities. So I was living 3 days a week in Napa, 3 days a week in Sacramento. And then we would meet halfway and trade houses on like Sundays and Wednesdays. So
Wow.
Wow.
I literally made my entire life, my entire identity attending this church. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't even go to high school so that I could attend this church. So much so
Oh,
that when my sophomore year ended, I was only 3 or 4 credits in a few subjects away from graduation, because I'm a very headstrong person and I was like, I'll just do a bunch of extra credit. And I finished almost all of my high school stuff between the first 2 years of high school. And I could have graduated like halfway through my junior year if I had stayed there. But then Dan announced that he was going to open a private school at Church of the Harvest called Harvest Academy School of Champions.
oh
And
wow.
I joined that high school. My dad, being the wise man that he was, always was like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" is this really what you want to do? And he's, do you want to go to college? I will pay for you to go to college. I'll pay for you to go to a Bible college. I'll pay for you to become a licensed counselor. Even though he didn't go to church, even though he didn't care about ministry, he was trying to find any opportunity that would help me further my life while still getting what I wanted. And yet I was like, no, I want to go to Harvest Academy because that's how I'm going to become a ministry person. So somehow I talked him into letting me. I think when it comes down to it, he was like, I either say yes and we'll deal with it later, or I say no and then I lose my daughter, because he knew I would just move in with my mom and be like, fine, this is what I'm doing. Headstrong is good sometimes. Other
Yeah.
times it can be.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get into the interesting thing that you do talk about this on your TikTok, and I've seen your stories. Pastor Dan started becoming a little bit more controlling after a while.
Honestly.
Yeah.
One of the things I haven't really gotten into my TikTok stories quite yet, because you just really have to understand the world I was in to understand why any of this would happen. So I joined that high school, the unaccredited high school that was such a shit show. My history class was church history, all that. I'm attending that church. I'm in my junior year. I was just turning 16. I turned 16. So I had graduated early. When I walked the stage, I was 16 years old. The winter before my graduation, I had already done my youth master's commission. Now, what's the next thing? I wanted to be a part of what we called OGs.
What I want people to understand what you said is something really important. What's the next thing? Because in a lot of churches and cults, there is always a next thing, a
Always.
next level. You will never just plateau or be good enough with what you've done and what you have and how you're doing. The next thing is always something else. And that is the way it always is. And it just, my neck starts to itch at the idea of the next thing, because there's always something.
It's never
And
good enough. Yeah.
I'm a very driven person. It's already built in me to want, okay, what am I working towards? I was a server for a while and I couldn't stand it because the only way to make money is stay as a server. But if I want to feel like I'm continuing my career, I wanted to work towards something, but then I was going to make less money as a manager. So I've always been that person to, I want to know what's the next thing. Ultra spoiler alert, here I am. I'm 32 years old and I own one business on my own. I am part owner of another business. And I finally got to the point where I'm like, my next thing is investing in me. But it took me 20 years of foolishness to get there. So I'm 16 years old. I want to know what the next thing is. And I'm I just really wanted to be a part of the leadership program. So they had Y Dogs, which was Young Disciples of God. And that was the youth discipleship program. And then I had already done a version of that back in Napa and graduated from it. So the next logical step would be for me to join OGs, the original gangsters. But I had to complete their version of Y Dogs and then get to OGs. So it wasn't transferable because every church was just creating these own little things.
Right.
Yes.
So I go through Y Dogs and I graduated and they're like, all right, we've accepted you into OGs, but before you do, you have to get jumped in. I'm not exaggerating. These are real words. These are real quotes from people they're saying this. So this man, he is at this point, he was probably 40-ish years old, single father of 3, and he's the senior pastor of a church and runs this intense discipleship program, which is his kids and their friends, really, when it comes down to it. It was like the pastor's kids that all got to the OG level. So me and one girl who had previously already been in OGs but then quit and wanted to come back, the two of us wanted to join or rejoin the OG program. So he said, all right, you have to get jumped in. We had to get dropped off at the church at 11 p.m. He loved 11 p.m. meetings.
Oh, I'm already connecting the dots. You say single dad that is being a pastor of a church with a bunch of young kids. My alarms already are going off.
Flags here.
Yeah. Yeah.
He brings these two girls to the church, and all of the other OGs. So it's his daughter and 2 sons, their best friend Dina, who was very close with them, and then another pastor's 2 kids or 3, and then there was another pastor who had kids. So there was like 6 or 7 of them. They all go into his office with him, and we had to sit and wait outside of his office, and we hear them like talking and laughing through the door. And they're like, all right, let's go. So they take us into the Suburban. The Suburban that he was driving was a gift from my family to him. My family, going through all of the things that they were going through, gifted him a Suburban. So we all pile into the Suburban. And the first stop we went to was like, we were going to TP a house. And the house was a pastor friend of Dan's. So we sneak out, and TPing was such a thing in like the youth groups. It was also something we always TP'd each other.
Okay, so this wasn't like a ministry thing you guys were doing. This was just a fun night type of thing.
But it was required. I had to go through this evening to be on the leadership team.
So it was like an initiation.
That's what we called it. So he said you have to get jumped in, and it's initiation night. So we go in, and this story, like, trigger warning for anybody who's been in like a frat or a sorority. We got literally hazed this night. I'm 16 years old. Had I known that this was hazing and had my parents like put 2 and 2 together, I would have been able to sue these people for what happened this night.
Sure.
So the first stop is we have to go TP a house. We get there and they're like, oh, but to make it harder, we're gonna TP you first. They wrapped us in toilet paper. It was weird. So then we go to the house, and as I'm about to throw the first toilet paper roll, I start seeing like out of the corner of my eye something like wrestle on the roof of the house. And I look at Jade, the other girl, and I said, run. I start running down the street. They had their entire youth group, the other pastor, come out with like squirt guns and hoses and scare us. We're like, oh man, like they got us. We were going to prank them. They pranked us back. So funny. So I escaped. I booked it, and I don't even run. If I'm ever running, you better run too, because something is chasing us, because I don't run at all. Booking it down this street into the night. I'm like, you're not getting me. So they laughed. They're like, oh, that's crazy. That's funny. They load us up. So now it's about 12:30, and they take us to one of the malls in the area. And it's in the hood, this mall. And this is where like shootings happen. They bring us behind all the buildings. And then there's this 2 like dumpsters. And you can see through like the darkness that there's 2 men like wrapped in sleeping bags, like sleeping leaned up against a dumpster. And they're like, go minister to him.
What? No.
Were they real homeless people, or were they just set up there to scare you guys?
What in the heck?
So in the middle of the night, we go,
Weird.
I'm like shaking, and I'm like, excuse me. And it was all of the college age disciple kids in Jason masks. They jump out and scare us. So now we've been pranked twice. Oh my goodness, this is so crazy. So I'm like, so far we've survived the night. And I'm like, this is going to be easy. Like, they think they got me. Someone jumped out and said, boo. Oh, I know who it was. I was ready to fight him. I don't care. I'm hardcore. We're going to TP me. I ran away. I got this. I thought this was going to be hard. So they take me to Walmart. They take us to Walmart. And there's a 24-hour Walmart. And the pastor buys 50 feeder goldfish, the little tiny ones.
No, you're not telling a goldfish story. No way.
I am. There was no eating of goldfish.
Okay. I was going to say, come on.
Yeah, dude, that's different.
Mm.
This is so much worse, honestly. So they take us to one of the kids that was with us, their house. And their parents were pastors. They were about to move away to Texas. And they were like moving out of this house in like the next month or so. Again, it's December. At this point, it's 2 or 3 in the morning by the time we get to their house. And no one has touched the pool in their backyard since summer. It's like not, oh, it's dirty. It's black. Like disgusting swamp water nastiness. Sacramento we don't get snow or anything, but it was probably like at most 45 to 50 degrees outside. Freezing. And the pastor walks up with the bag of fish, dumps it in the pool, and says, "These fish represent all of your family, all of your friends, everyone out there that you know that isn't saved. Are you willing to put yourself where it's uncomfortable and save them?"
Gosh, this is like combat Christianity.
It's
Like,
weird.
yeah, it is.
I'm 16 years old.
Jeez.
I didn't know it at the time, but I suffer from anxiety. And I had a panic attack. The
Yeah.
first I ever remember. And I'm like, the water's cold. And I'm like, oh, what if I get in the water and my muscles freeze up and I forget how to swim and then I drown?
And
Yeah.
also, let's just remind everyone, this is like at 12:30 in the morning. Like now, but I'm saying it's middle of the night. This is not like daylight where you can see what's going on or you can see the water. Yeah, I would be a little paranoid.
Light up from the second floor pointing down. And there were several adults there. 2 of the 3 have come back and been like, "I cannot believe I was a part of that. I'm so sorry." Dan,
Oh, hold on, Jenny. I thought you were going to say, let's stop and remind people that this is not how Christianity should be.
Also that, Susie.
for any reason, I don't care what it's for. If someone says, "Hey, I'm gonna throw some fish into a pool," those fish were already dead. As soon as those fish hit that water, that cold water, they were gone.
Oh my gosh, it's so awful. You're telling a story of something I thought that I knew what around the block of church was like, but this is so crazy.
It is crazy.
In full-time ministry, we haven't even gotten to the crazy.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Years old, they're like, "Go save 5 fish each. You have to jump in." They specifically said, "Jump in, save 5 fish, and then you can be done. If you do this, you're in OGs." And I had now worked for years to get to this point. And all I wanted in life was to be an OG. I'm gonna die in this pool.
Yeah.
Dramatic, but that's what was going through my head. So I go in and I like put my foot in and I convince myself I can do it. I go and I'm like using my t-shirt. Of course I had to wear this like baggy t-shirt because God forbid I be in water and anything that would show I have a body. Using my t-shirt and I'm scooping up these fish and I'm throwing them onto the side of the pool. Again, where's the saving part? I don't know. So I'm killing these fish, throwing them out on the side of the pool. I get my 5 and this is after I begged and pleaded for over an hour. "Don't make me do this. Please don't make me do this." I'm crying. There's pictures of me holding on to a fence, like a chain link fence, being like, "Don't make me do it," and crying. And they're like, "If you want in, this is what you have to do.
Oh my
So
gosh.
go big or go home." And we mean go big or go home.
Jeez.
So I do it. I'm like crying and I'm like about to walk away. I'm like, "All right." Then someone hands me a towel. Then I hear the pastor said, What are you doing? Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I did it." And he's like, "Did you?" And I'm like, Yeah, 5 fish. I showed you." He said, "But I said jump in. I didn't say walk in. I said jump in. If you can't,"
Oh, he wants you wet from head to toe. That's what he wants.
he said, "if you can't listen to instructions,
Mhm.
think that you can be an OG? If you really want to be at the highest level at your age, you need to show me that you can fully do every part of what I told you." So then I'm like really crying. I think that's when the picture of me like holding and I was like, "I'm gonna drown." And he's no. So we finally, after 45 minutes of me begging, he agrees that he'll hold my hand while I jump in. That way, if anything happens, he can pull me out.
So manipulative.
When I go to the deep end and I like jump in and I like climb out. And I remember being so cold and they're like, "Don't worry, we have the shower upstairs on for you already." So I walked up the stairs wrapped in a towel, dripping wet. And as soon as they opened the bathroom for me to go in there, the steam came out, and I remember it feeling like needles on all of my skin because the steam contrast of the cold of my body hurt so bad. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. I get cleaned up, warmed up, and they're like, all right, you guys passed. We're going to Denny's. We go to Denny's. We had like breakfast at 5:30 in the morning, high-fived each other, and I was part of OGs.
Wow.
So that's how I got in to this inner circle. And now that I was in the inner circle, and that was literally the first step of me becoming not just a ministry person, not just a volunteer, not just someone who was a part of the church, but I stepped into something a lot bigger and a lot scarier and a lot darker.
Yeah.
And that was when I was 16 years old. So I graduated from high school the following spring, walked the stage with my fake diploma and everything. And I had plans during that last year of high school that I was going to join a program called Honor Academy that was based out of Texas. Honor Academy is part of Acquire the Fire, which was a conference that would travel the world, but mostly the US. And that conference was like the first big event I had ever been to as a child, way before I even went to Church of the Harvest. And I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. So when they were talking about, oh, you're going to do big things, I wanted to create my own version of that conference. And that was like my life dream. And I wanted to join their discipleship program, their school of ministry that was out in Texas. And then right before I was supposed to go into like my college age part of life, they announced that they were going to do a West Coast campus that was going to focus on youth ministry. I was like, this is exactly what I want in life. So they announced it. It was supposed to open the year that I would have gone into college. I started raising money, saving money, doing all that. And I like started meeting with one of the counselors there to get me enrolled. And when I started doing that process, they're like, oh, that project's been put on hold. We're not doing this one. And I was devastated. And I was like, okay, like now what? So I didn't know what to do. And then I told the pastor, because at this point now he's my mentor. I'm seeing him on a regular basis. There was a point in my life where like when we hadn't fully moved to Sacramento and I was living in Napa but attending Church of the Harvest, my parents would drop me off on Thursday nights and I would stay with one of 3 or 4 different families, and he was one of them. So he like was really in my life. So I hung out with him and his family weekly, and they were very close with me. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm devastated. The same week that happened, my boyfriend that I thought I was going to marry, he broke up with me so that he could pursue his Christian rap career.
Okay, wait, I just have to ask, did he have a rap name?
Oh, he did.
I would love to hear what it is.
So they were a duo. There were 2 guys. And their individual names were Easy Mac and Cheesy Mac.
Oh, wow.
The cringe factor.
I just feel like it's like this weird version of Beverly Hills 90210. You're in California, and then I got to pursue my music, man. I'm going to be a rap star.
Austin, Texas, to pursue his Christian rap career.
Oh my.
How's that working out?
You can still find the videos on YouTube if you look hard enough.
I'm going to look that up.
Oh, wow. You really dodged a bullet there.
You know what? We've since reconnected. He and his family are doing wonderful. Josh is awesome. Good. I made fun of him because it was a song that was called Breaking It Down or Break It Down. And it was all about you can still have fun and dance without being immodest. And it specifically talked about like inappropriate dancing between males and females and how it's not necessary. But a few weeks before that was released, he took me to prom and homeboy was grinding up on me. So
I got to find a better way to not sin.
Austin, and I think it was the right move for him, and it relieved me from being a rapper wife.
Yes, a Christian rapper wife, which like
Wife.
I just see DC Talk. Yeah,
Yeah, Toby Mac's wife and we could have been besties.
okay,
And
I know. Oh my gosh. Like it takes me back to all those times I went to Newsboys conference.
Oh, wow. You were allowed to do that, huh?
Yeah, I've never actually been to a non-Christian concert ever. And
Okay.
I could go now, except it's like too expensive. Like I can't believe how actually expensive most other concerts are. But because most Christian ones were free. And then I'm like, how in the heck is regular concerts so expensive? But it's my dream someday. I'm gonna see something other than Newsboys or DC or
hey,
Sandy Patty.
hey, what was the Newsboys song? There's no cereal in hell. They don't serve breakfast in hell.
Yes, I swear I've seen them like 5 times.
My boyfriend was leaving me to pursue his Christian rap career. My ministry training program was put on hold and I didn't know what to do. So I went out to dinner. It was my family and the pastor's family. It was very common for us to do that. And we were telling him how heartbroken I was because of all this. And he said, "It's so funny that you say that because God really put it on my heart to start my own." Convenient timing.
Yeah.
And it was really for me and then the girl I mentioned before, Dina, who we were too advanced for master's commission, which we already had at our church. The thought behind it is usually people coming out of high school, going into their college age years that want to join ministry, but haven't been trained in ministry in any way. So it's a year or 9 months to invest in your future in ministry by dedicating your time and focus to just being in a godly environment. So you show up, you pray in the morning, you have classes and devotions and projects, and then they minister, they travel. But it's meant for people who had never been in discipleship programs. Now, I had been in discipleship programs since I was 10 years old. So I already knew that I don't have sex, don't listen to secular music. We had to pass a scripture test at the end of Master's Commission. I had already passed the scripture test. It would have been redundant for me to do it. He said, "So I want to create this new program called Elite Academy." And Elite Academy is for people like you and Dina who just want to go to ministry school. You don't need the basic discipleship. And he started telling me this whole vision of how it was going to be different than Master's Commission. Master's Commission, you are in student housing. You have a curfew. It's more about the discipline, 9 years of a disciplined life. So like I said, you have to live in student housing. There was these men's house where they have 6 dudes to a room in these bunk beds, and it was not great. And Elite Academy will all have home openers. So someone in the church will open up a room in their home for you. In your room, every Elite Academy student will have a mini fridge. You're going to have no curfew. We trust you more. And then, so there was all this draw because you had earned these cooler experiences. And then there was going to be conferences included into your tuition. And you were going to be taken to at least 2 conferences every year. And you were going to minister more, and you were going to have so many more opportunities. So he tells me this is what we're going to be. Master's Commission was $2,000 a year. Elite Academy was going to be $3,500. And I was like, I have to do this. It was meant for me. It was built for me. Clearly, this is God. This is the Holy Spirit. This is my destiny. I need to join Elite Academy. So I convinced my parents to pay. And then right as I'm signing up, they're like, "Actually, we found this extra conference that we think would be really great for you. If you're interested in going to an additional conference, then your tuition will be $4,000 for this year rather than $3,500.
An extra $500. No big deal.
I'm like, "Yes, do it." So I'm checking in over the summer. Oh, how's the plans going? Who's my home opener going to be? I haven't gotten anyone to accept to be home openers. We're a little worried about it, but we'll figure it out.
Wait, this is in your hometown though, right? At the same church that you go to. And
Yeah.
I feel like they use a lot of very cool words that just mean like the same thing as not much of anything.
That's what I was thinking.
So the big thing that was taught with like master's commission and all of these things is that you're supposed to be separating yourself from your normal life. And usually people who go to master's commission will go to other cities. I was going to have the privilege of learning the ministry at my own church where I could eventually get plugged into a staff position quicker,
Hmm.
but they still wanted me to have that experience of being out of the norm because that is what was going to attribute to my growth. I couldn't very well grow in the same environment I had already been in. I couldn't become a different person if I was still running home to mommy and daddy at the end of the day. And I was still 16 years old. Mind you, I went into Elite Academy as a 16-year-old. I turned 17 a month after I joined full-time discipleship. They put me in student housing. So I shared a room with 3 other girls, and we had bunk beds made out of 2x4s and plywood. I was the only one that could afford to have a car. So I had my own car. I ended up being our transportation to and from church every single day. No one gave me gas money. They would trash my car. My car was always filthy. And I lived, it was me and Jade who had done the initiation with me.
Yeah.
And 2 girls who were in master's commission. Now they very early on established Elite Academy is better than master's commission. And then now these girls resented us because we thought we were better. I don't think I'm better. I just have earned more. And I didn't mean to come off any way. And I was trying to be friends with these girls that I lived with. I had to see every single day. But they had this, they really pit Elite Academy against Master's Commission. And it created this like rivalry on so many different levels. So I ended up living like I wake up and I look at another girl when I wake up and she was in master's commission. And like that housing situation, we had roaches at one point. Like there was 7 people who lived in a 4-bedroom condo. 4 of us were in the student room. The leader of the master's commission program had her own room. Her sister lived downstairs, and then another staff member lived in the room next to me. And because I was in student housing, and now all of a sudden I had a curfew just like everyone else. And in Elite Academy, there's only 3 students, Jade, Dina, and myself. It was the only one that ended up getting a home opener. And her home opener was Dan,
Oh boy.
which he told
Wait,
me that he couldn't be my home opener because he needed to separate himself as the pastor and it would be inappropriate for him to open his home to someone.
But he's a single dad.
She was
Yeah.
17 when she moved in. She and his daughter shared a bed, lived with them.
Wow.
yeah.
I'm going to give you the biggest spoiler alert right now.
Yeah.
Obviously ended up being very close in the Nally family. She used to call Dan like another father to her. She would use his last name as her own when she would put on social media. She called the 3 kids her siblings. She became his personal assistant, worked with him very close. And then a few years ago, she married his youngest son with a 9-year age difference.
So Pastor Dan is an interesting character as you are now in Elite Academy and you are getting more involved in ministry. Then you're getting older and you're within obviously dating age, or as they call it, courtship age. And so then Pastor Dan starts to really be a big influence in this area of your growing up.
So courtship was, at this time, I had heard the term courtship, and the Duggars were really famous around this time. So I think it was during my 2nd year of full-time ministry. So in my 2nd year of Elite Academy, I was an intern, he announced that he was going to create and establish a courtship model for all the students that were in staff members, if they were single, that wanted to pursue ministry and also wanted to pursue a relationship. So he created a 3-phase program for courtship, and it was the Church of the Harvest Courtship Way.
So how many people went to Church of the Harvest or go there?
It would vary over the years. Now that I think about it, I think at the most when I was there, there'd be like 300 or 400 attendees on a Sunday morning. It would go down to as little as 100. There was a lot of times when I was there that we'd have like 3 services. So it's hard to tell how many people were actually there.
Right.
Repeating services, like some people would go to all 3 services. And then they would have like multiple sites. It was just very like cloak and dagger, because what really was going on? How many people really were there? I don't know. But it was sizable. It wasn't a tiny church. It was an like Food for Less that they had gutted and turned into a church. It's in a strip mall.
Okay. Yeah. So you have this single pastor who now wants to create a courtship program for the single staff members and the elite academy members to follow.
Yeah.
And so what were the steps that he had given? Did you say 3 steps, right? 3
Phases.
steps. 3 phases of courtship.
So Dan Nally created courtship, and that, or the courtship program, phase 1, he focused in on doing things the right way so much. And by the time I got to the courtship thing, he could look at me from across the room and I'd be like, oh, I'm in trouble. Or I was so controlled. And there's so much that goes into that. All I wanted was to do things the right way and earn a ministry, like a life of ministry. That's all I wanted. So he expresses that we're going to do this and it's going to help to establish godly relationships. It's going to help prepare people for marriage, and it's going to stop the temptation from losing your purity too soon. No one really questioned, oh, he's a single man, why should he give this insight? Because he was the victim in the situation.
According to him, though, did you ever talk to the wife? Because that's his story, right?
I would love to talk to her. She ran away and married the bass player.
Oh my God. What? So there's a show called Righteous Gemstones?
Yes.
And
We all went on tour. I went on tour. I was traveling. I used to preach. I've gone as far as Texas and Missouri and all through California preaching. There was one time that I was, before the courtship thing was like official and like the way that Dan Nally had it, I went on tour and a guy saw me preaching my 4-minute sermon. And it was probably on obedience or something like that. Something about being subservient or whatever. But he saw me preaching and he came up to Dan and was like, I want to marry her. That's my wife. And Dan like established like guidelines for us to communicate. And like, again, this is before the courtship thing was like real. And we had very strict rules of how much we were allowed to communicate and like in what ways, blah, 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 blah. Most of our conversations were public, and I wasn't really feeling it, and I kind of had a crush on another guy, but I like literally loved the attention. So I was just like playing the field and seeing how it was. And there were certain things I didn't really love about him, but it was like he was the only one that was like really into me, and I was secure. So I was like letting it happen. I finally was like, I'm not really sure if you're the person I want to marry. Let's like distance ourselves. And then he got his ex-girlfriend pregnant. I don't think he was following all the rules on his end. So much.
You can tell sometimes with that, it maybe not following all the rules.
What I'm told, if you ride in a car alone with the opposite sex, that's how you get pregnant.
So true. Yes,
that is true.
They probably were listening to secular music on the way too.
That's true. And dancing inappropriately.
That is a pair that goes together, rock and roll and driving in cars alone. I think we talked about this during one of our episodes, Susie, on purity culture.
So she went on and got remarried, and she's still in ministry. She still leads worship at another church.
Good for her.
Like establishing the godly way, because I'm sure he was sitting there in prayer and a gold dust halo fell upon him and it was like courtship. or something.
Yeah.
All right, this is how we're going to do courtship from here on out, blah, blah, blah. Phase 1 is let's get to know each other. We're not going to have feelings. We're not going to talk about the future. We're just going to be friends, but we're off the market. Phase 1 could last as long as it needed to. It's encouraged for it to last long. During your phase 1, you have a bunch of rules and stuff. But getting to phase 1 was a feat in itself. I made a whole video just about getting to courtship. So I'll use the one relationship that I actually did court as an example. I was interested in a man named Brad. Should have known when his name was Brad. I digress. Very grateful for the time I spent with Brad because it got me out of a cult. He was very manipulative and terrible, but it served a purpose. There was no way I was going to end up leaving this church unless it happened exactly the way it happened. I was so sold on everything this man said. He could have sold me a glass of ice water in a snowstorm, for sure. So I liked Brad. Brad liked me. I'm not allowed to tell Brad I like Brad. Brad's not allowed to tell me he likes me. Brad doesn't go to our church, so I'm having to tell him this is how things go without alluding to me liking him. It's very tricky. Playing chess, not checkers here. So I had to be like, oh yeah, we do this courtship thing. So weird. Just random information in case you were ever. He was actually attending Jesus culture at the time. So he lived 2.5 hours away from me. He would come into Sacramento to go to his church. And then he had previously graduated from Master's Commission when I was still in high school because he was a little bit older than me. I liked the older guys, as most good Christian girls do. And he had already graduated and moved away. He married someone and got divorced that was in Master's Commission with him. And now he's back on the market. Came in a Sunday morning. I saw him from across the foyer and I was like, ooh, that one. I want that one. And I like looked over to one of the pastor's daughters and I was like, I heard he was married. She's like, no, he got divorced. And I was like, oh, that's so terrible. Adding him on every social media. Oh, hey, Brad, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And then we like start to chatting and we use Snapchat. Big sin there.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I had just re-downloaded Snapchat, but it was the only way he was responding. So I was like jumping on it. So we would talk on Snapchat or Instagram here and there. And I was like, so I like this guy. We decided that we want to pursue courtship. So I went to Dan and said, I like him. And then I like nudged him to do the same. So we have to like separately tell Dan that we are interested in each other so that he can set up the courtship. And I had tried setting up courtships previously with other people. And I'd be like, hey, I really like this guy. I liked JD a lot. And JD and I hung out like every day. And he seems to like me. He's telling me that he likes me. He's sneaking around with me. So we should court so that we're not breaking any rules.
So everything had to go through Dan.
Everything had to go
Like
through.
the leadership or the entire church?
Was never required.
Yeah, but it was an unspoken requirement.
It's like premarital counseling at your church where you have to do that if you want to get married in the church, but it's not required. And then the pastor can still say, I don't think you should marry this person. Like so much power and control to such an insignificant man.
I would be like, all right, Dan, I want to pursue courtship with this person. If he didn't approve, then he just like, would say no. There was one time that he wanted to really like drive it through my brain that it was a bad idea for me to court this previous guy. So he brought us in and I thought might be doing a courtship thing. And he made the guy, he's like, do you like her? Are you interested in her? He's like, oh, she's cool. And do you want to marry her? And he's like, you hear the way he's talking about you? He doesn't want you. And I was like, oh, okay. He's stopped talking to them. So that's how previous courtship situations have been for me. So this one, I'm like, he's like, do you really like this guy? Do you really? And at this point, I'm like 21, 22. I'm getting old at this point. The clock is ticking. I better hurry up. So I was like, yeah, I really like him. He's okay. He seems like a good guy. We'll talk about it. And he's like, how have things been going so far? What do you know about him? I'm like, oh, he's like, how much do you talk? Like, we talk, we exchange texts, and we pretty much talk every day. Oh, you're talking every day without talking to me, without getting my permission, without any rules? That's not okay. You need to stop all contact right now. So I broke off complete contact until we had a courtship meeting. I had to wait like a week or two. And he would still talk to my family. Mind you, he had been coming and hanging out with my family. He had been doing family dinners. We're just getting to know each other in a very godly way from my perspective at this point. But I'm like, all right, let's court. Let's court. I want to make it real because it's not real unless Dan has a stamp of approval. So I'm like, okay, I'll stop talking to him. We finally we meet at, it's like a Wednesday night. We go in, we sit down and have our courtship meeting. And then he establishes, all right, if you want to join the courtship protocol, we're going to talk about phase 1. Phase 1 is we're going to spend some time getting to know each other, looking for red flags. The idea is find any reason you wouldn't want to marry this person. And it was specifically explained as red flags. So red flags could be anything from, I hate the way that mother effer chews, and I could not be in the same room as him for the rest of my life. Please get me out of here. Red flag could be, he's terrible with his money, and I don't want that to be the head of my household. A red flag could be, he's always late to church, and I'm in ministry. That's not a good, we would not be equally yoked.
Oh boy.
All of those things. So that's the purpose. You're looking for any little thing that would cause a breakup later.
Here's the real red flags of this is an abusive relationship of manipulation and like this person will physically assault you or is a sexual assault or any of that stuff.
No, we love the sinner and hate the sin.
Oh
There,
boy. So like at no point was anybody like Brad or not Chad. I won't use Chad, but like any people like I'm gay and the red flag is that I actually don't like women. You know what I mean? Did that ever, I'm just curious about, did he write those type of things into his courtship rules, like how to connect other types of relationships? Like those are very important too.
never. There was only like traditional.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a student in master's commission during his first year who came out and asked for deliverance because he was struggling with obsessive compulsive disorder that was telling him he was gay. It wasn't that he was struggling with homosexual ideation. The OCD was telling him he was gay, and then he got delivered from that OCD.
Oh.
He is now happily married to my ex-best friend. He and I may have dated at one point. He also was a huge part of the story where when I eventually got fired, he ended up playing quite an important role in that scenario. So no, there was no opportunity for anybody to have anything. It's just an attack from the devil if you have anything besides a traditional marriage structure.
Oh,
Courtship under Dan's rule was customizable, we'll say. So each couple during their phase 1 courtship meeting was given their own set of rules that pertained to them, that was customized to their needs. And personally, I had committed very young that I wanted to save my first kiss for marriage. So things like that would be considered when creating the rules for us. So if I wanted that, my friend wanted to just wait for engagement. So like different rules will go for different needs. So he sat down with us, and I had known what other couples have gotten, and my rules were extremely strict in comparison. I have always been known within that church as the flirt. I was the Jezebel. I was the promiscuous one. They were worried that men were going to fall at my feet and hand me their virginity. Meanwhile, I'm literally like, I don't even want to have my first kiss. I was so committed to the purity thing, like way before I even joined this church. Like I was so big on I just wanted to be pure and holy and intact. I
Sure.
didn't want to get a tattoo until I was married because I didn't want to disappoint my husband by getting something he wouldn't like. I wanted to like really live this like godly woman, wife, mother person.
I'm like on the edge of my seat wondering, did you and Brad ever tie the knot? What happened? Did that
We did not get married, but we did decide to court. So my rules for courtship were we were allowed 10 text messages per day. We were allowed to talk on the phone for 30 minutes every day. We were allowed to hang out 2 days a week, unless it was a Sunday that was a freebie. So up to 3 days a week. That way we could be allowed to go to church together and like get lunch after or something like that. Never ever were we allowed to be alone. Never ever were we allowed to have any type of physical contact outside of a handshake or a high five.
oh,
No hugging, no side hugging, nothing. We also were very much not allowed to talk about the future or our future together. We couldn't express any type of feelings outside of friendship. It was meant to be a friendship where we're inspecting each other. And inspecting was the word that was used for this. So every one of our peers would know that we were off the market, but we weren't, there was no I love yous or anything like that. 3 weeks into our relationship, he told me he loved me and I got in trouble for it because I was the one that was supposed to be setting the example for him because I was in Elite Academy and he was outside the church and he doesn't know the courtship way and I should be showing him.
so who was saying that you were in trouble? Pastor Dan?
Things I got in trouble for. He said he loved me. One time I was sitting next to him on a couch, like this much apart, leave enough room for Jesus. And I reached over and rubbed his arm. And during that scenario, my brother had left the room because he didn't want to watch what we were watching on TV. So we were alone in a living room and I touched his arm. I got in trouble before phase one because we were communicating too much and on Snapchat. And I think that was like all the big things that I got in trouble for. So what would happen was like I went to go visit his family. He lived almost 3 hours away in Sonora. I lived in the Sacramento area, and my whole family went to go visit him for 4th of July. And while we were there is when I touched his arm. And I came back, and Dan was like, "How was your trip? Did you love it?" I was actually there because I was ministering at a church near him that same weekend. I was preaching. It was an opportunity for me to raise money for the missions trip that I was going on a month later, and I spent an extra couple days there to see his family. So he's like, "How was the trip? How was the preaching?" Asking me how everything went. And he says, I'm like, "Oh, it was good." And he says, "So how did you do with following the rules?" And it's just one-on-one, me and the pastor's office. I think we did
Yeah.
good. He's like, "How did you do?" And if Dan and the type of control that like he really had over me, that these looks that he would give you, that he would just like stare through your soul and you could feel it. And he was like, "What are you not telling me?" kind of face. And I was like, "Well, I think he's like, "Were you ever alone?" We weren't like alone, but my brother like went into the other room and all the doors were open. That is not okay. And you know better. And like starts leading in. What did anything happen while you were alone? I touched his arm. "Oh, do you think that's okay?" Blah, blah, blah. There was a big thing over the years I was there. Better. Come on. Better. And you just get like this like heavy, like intimidating, like it's that I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed, like vibe that your parent.
Sure.
And he would just like, and I'm thinking the Holy Spirit has told him that I'm this or that. It's this like view of he knows better than me and I better tell the truth because if he finds out that I'm lying, it's going to be worse. Lose my ministry position. I could lose this and I could lose that. There was a time that I asked one question and I got demoted and wasn't allowed to attend a church service without serving it for a full calendar year. The intensity on these things was out of hand. So
Mhm.
he asks me, I rat myself out. When I got in trouble for him telling me that when Brad told me he loved me and I got in trouble for that, I went to Dan for advice because I was like, hey, I don't know what to do because this is not what we agreed on. And he's love bombing me. I didn't know it was love bombing then, but like he's saying this and it seems too fast. With the courtship stuff, it would just be like, I would get a stern talking to. He would be like, I don't know if you're ready for this. And I don't know if you're ready for a life in ministry. I don't know if you're ready for marriage if this is how you're behaving.
So you have like your pastor who you obviously looked up to, who was your mentor all these years, now is making you question, am I ready for ministry? Because if I'm doing these things and I'm disappointing the pastor, how could I be possibly ready for ministry, let alone this serious relationship?
And I
Did
had been
he
8.5 years at this point. I was a staff member. There was a lot on the line from where I was standing.
Yeah. So did he ever make you and Brad end it?
No.
Okay.
It didn't make us.
But he heavily influenced it.
So I mentioned earlier that I was going to go to a missions trip. I went to India. And India is what saved my life. India is what changed my perspective on religion. India is what changed my perspective on discipleship, on relationships, everything. I spent 3 weeks there. And if I didn't go on that trip, I would still be on staff at Church of the Harvest. They'll tell you that like when you're there, if you have contact with your family, like some people just won't have contact with their family while they're if you do, you tell your family, do not tell me anything that will pull my mind or heart out of this trip. So I told my whole family, listen, I don't care if someone dies at home, wait until I am back on US soil to tell me because I don't want to be distracted because I'm not going to be able to get home. Just let me find out when I come back. And my whole family agreed to it. Pastor agreed to it. My ministry people. I was like, everything, like I set up the ministries that I was in charge of. I had set up like everything for them. They didn't need to contact me. It was very plug and play, go for it. It was just small groups ministry that wasn't even started yet. And no one should be contacting me about ministry, not about anything, just encouragement and whatever. So halfway through my trip, I'm getting texts from Dan about ministry. Hey, I really want you to start posting and like getting the feelers out for a small group who wants to be a leader. I'm like, okay, I have spotty Wi-Fi. When I'm somewhere that I can get Wi-Fi, I can try to post something here and there, but I really don't have the ability to contact much people. I'll post on Facebook. He's okay, doesn't respond. And then a few more days go by. Dan starts reaching out to me and says, hey, kid, I hate to do this. And he called me kid because it was like this term of endearment. Like, I'm older than him. Like, I was a child. And he's, hey, kid, I hate to do this to you, but Brad's interrogating me about the way that we do things. And you don't ask Dan questions. Mind you, like I said earlier, I asked Dan, what are we doing today? Actually, I asked someone else, what's the plan? And I got demoted for a year. So I'm like, oh no.
Wow.
He's interrogating me. He's saying, Brad is saying that you both are very disappointed with the way that I'm doing this. I never said that. And to my knowledge, Brad didn't feel that way. I come to find out later on, like what the text message was like, hey, I feel like I haven't been doing this the right way. Can you help me out? Can we meet so I can better understand? But of course he manipulates it into because he started seeing that Brad was going to empower me to be, and he started seeing that Brad's perspective on ministry was not the same as mine. It wasn't a wholehearted sacrifice. I'll give everything the way.
Well, it wasn't the same as Dan's, really.
He keeps like blowing my phone up and saying, basically questioning whether or not I should be in this relationship because what if Brad pulls me away from ministry? My parents had stopped going to the church at this point because of a lot of things, including an $18,000 ridiculous situation with Dan when he needed to save his house. And my family gave him a duffel bag of cash and then he lied about it.
No, what is shocking is that this is so typical of church leadership. Even what I mean, so typical all these years.
Yeah.
And it never changes. What's shocking is it's not shocking. And it should be not like this, but insane that that is stuff that's still happening. And I hate that your
Absolutely.
family got taken advantage of.
So because of all of like my parents experiencing what they experienced, they were on the other side. Listen, we want to support you in ministry, but like we don't agree with this guy and we don't love the control that he has in this. Like stepdad was like, he should not be telling you whether or not you can hold hands. Like he's old. You should be allowed to talk on the phone for 35 minutes instead of 30. Oh, a fun little tidbit because Dan decided that he would gift us a loophole that we were allowed to leave each other unlimited voicemails every day.
Wow.
We would communicate for hours via voicemail. I would call him, he wouldn't pick up, I would leave a voicemail. I would listen to the voicemail, then or like he would listen to the voicemail, we would go back and forth. Like walking.
Yeah, but what's the point of not being able to talk on the phone? It's all about control.
Yeah,
And
other kids, other like students had to follow these rules. Other students were allowed 40 text messages a day, an hour on the phone. They were allowed to see each other 5 times a week. I, being the harlot that I wasn't allowed to have such lenient rules. So Brad and I started our courtship in May. I went to India in August. Dan already is laying on thick that it's Brad is gonna pull me away. And he's, your family's not in the church and they're already a bad influence. And he would like straight up tell me that my family was gonna pull me away from ministry because they didn't value it the way that I valued it. And if Brad is doing it, then and then he starts like questioning, start looking, and I had this on text message, I've posted it on TikTok. Think about all the people who have started out in West Coast, which is like the Master's Commission Elite Academy umbrella, in discipleship. And then they left the church. Where are they now? Are they successful? Are they happy? Are they in ministry? No, they're not. Do you want to end up like them? And he would use people that I grew up with as examples. The women's pastor's daughter had left ministry. She now has came back, whatever. But do you want to end up like her? She's not happy, clearly. You want to end up like Christine, who was like one of my best friends, and we grew up together. We were in Napa together and then in Sacramento. Do you want to end up like her? And he's sending these text messages. Brad's going to make you like one of them, and you don't want that. So I'm sitting in India, and I'm like, I'm not even supposed to be talking to you about anything like this. Everything that is in me says that I shouldn't stop dating Brad, that he's going to be right for me. And I'm sure it was God, the universe, whatever you want to subscribe to, saying he's going to be your way out. Like it felt right to stay. And it was like, nothing is aligning with what Dan is telling me. And I'm just confused. I'm like, the whole 24-hour series of flights back home, I'm just like trying to figure out whether or not I should be in this relationship. When I got home, it was his birthday, and I had a bunch of stuff planned for his birthday. So we went to Redding, we went to Bethel, and went on a hike, and this whole thing, my family took us there. I was so scared to do all these things for his birthday because Dan's telling me I shouldn't even be with him. So I'm so stressed out about it. So that's in August. And then he pulls back from the like, is this the right thing? And my family convinces me, like, what if when you go into phase 2, John took over the courtship? Like, then Dan's not in charge of it. And then, because when he originally told us about courtship, it wasn't that he had to be in control of it, that it should be the girl in the relationship's father that runs the courtship because he's her covering. If you don't have a good covering, then Dan would lend himself. And because my family was being painted as this like stumbling block for me, I had opted to have Dan run it. And I lived at this point. I had moved back home. So it was ridiculous that they wouldn't be the ones in charge. But
Yeah.
all that to say, like, I was so under the mind control that I had.
Sure.
So they're like, what if Mom took over during phase 2? Things don't seem to be adding up. Things are weird. And then I run it past Dan. Hey, I feel like I'm ready for phase 2. And how would you feel about John taking over, my stepdad, John, taking over? And he's, oh, you're ready for phase 2. What do you like? How do you know? And then tells me, like, it doesn't really seem like you are ready for it. Are you sure? Could you get married today and be happy with your decision? Do you know that there's nothing that about this man that you like wouldn't want to marry? And I was like, my response was, I want to say yes, but I'm hesitant to answer so quickly. I think I know what I need to know, but I don't know how to know what I don't know. And how would I know that I don't know something? And I'm asking him for advice. He goes, it really seems like you don't know what you're talking about at this point. Brad had hurt himself at work. He had a big boy job and he fell and hurt his hip and had to get surgery for it. When he was going to be recovering from surgery, he was concerned that he wasn't going to have anybody helping him to go to the bathroom or like whatever, because he wasn't going to be able to walk for at least a week. And his dad was a prison guard. So he had 24-hour shifts. So there would be spans of time that he wouldn't have anybody at home to take care of him. And he was a little worried. So my family had offered their home to him. Previously, when Brad would come to visit, if he couldn't find somewhere to stay, Dan had made a special allowance for him to stay at my house if he stayed in our backyard in a tent.
I love that I feel like you're about to go from you barely touched his arm one time to now you're helping him pee.
So I set up a schedule for him to be able to stay at my house for 3 weeks with us only seeing each other for 2 days a week because we were going to still follow all the phase 1 rules.
Oh my gosh. I cannot. You were in a cult?
I was in a cult.
You need to tell those people who are coming to this thing. You got to
Was
tell
I in a
them.
cult? Yes, I was. I sure was.
Yes,
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my
I
gosh.
made a schedule for 3 weeks. We would only see each other on the allotted amount of time. Because I was going to see him and then immediately leave out of town for a fundraiser.
Yeah.
So I was going to go to LA. I was going to fly there on a Friday. And I would be gone for a week and then see him after. He would be able to stay with my family's house. And then there was only, in the 3-week span, there was only 2 days outside of the allotted amount that we were allowed to see each other, or that I wouldn't have somewhere to stay. And I told Dan I would sleep in the tent so he could recover. And Dan went off on me and was like, why are you asking to move in with your boyfriend? I'm not. I'm asking for him to have help while he's recovering from surgery. My family's offering him help. They like literally set up like a makeshift room in the living room so that he would be able to recover there. And they're
So
like,
at no point did your stepdad or your mom call Pastor Dan and be like, how about you just stay in your freaking corner and let us take care of this person and my adult daughter and let us handle things? Like, because they were out of the church at this point.
like that, I stopped talking to them for 6 months. So they knew better.
Okay. Wow. So
Yeah.
it's hard for people to understand how the logical thing wasn't just happening, because in a cult you can't, and you're under such brainwashing and control by the person that you're obeying, which was Dan, that they don't get it. So did you guys
This whole like him going off on me about it is what tipped the scales.
okay, so finally you're starting to wake up a little bit.
I've mentioned several times that we weren't allowed to talk about the future. We weren't allowed to talk about feelings. And then Dan says, hey, so how's it, like in the midst of better again? And then a day later, as I'm like feeling guilty for asking for that. And I was like, that's not even what I was asking. He goes, so how is phase 1 going? And just wanted to check in. Oh, I think it's really good. What are you learning? Blah, blah, blah. Do you think you're ready for phase 2? Starts that conversation with me. And then he says, so if you guys go into phase 2 and then eventually get engaged and then get married, will you go to his church or are you guys going to come here? And I said, we haven't discussed it because that's in the future and we're not allowed to talk about the future. I think you guys should talk about it. So then
Yes.
I'm leaving him voicemails. Hey, Dan wants us to discuss this. After about 30 voicemails back and forth, I'm not exaggerating, we came to the conclusion that Brad didn't see himself staying at Church of the Harvest because he had all these red flags. This is not normal.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't think we'll end up going there when we're married. And I was like, okay. And then I reported back to Dan. I think eventually we would migrate to his church. And he goes, okay. So I think that you two should start talking about a timeline for that. And I was like, I think that it's really early to be talking about this. We've only been together for 6 months. I'm not ready to be married yet. And I just started this ministry. I had just become the leader of the small groups ministry. And I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into creating this program, and I want to see it through. And he said, yeah, I just don't see the point in waiting. If you're going to go, you should probably just go.
Wow.
And I'm like, this feels really rushed. And I feel like you're pressuring me. I literally said this and I had the text message. I was like, I feel like you're pressuring me into making bigger decisions than I'm ready to make at this moment with what I know. And I don't think it's time for that yet. And he was very patronizing the way he said it. Do you know what courtship is? Are you ready for marriage?
You're having this with Dan, though.
Just me and Dan.
Wow.
So then he starts telling me that I need to discuss it. And when he told me to discuss the topic of going to Brad's church, the timeline, all of that, he specifically told me he didn't want me to have any outside influence from my parents. And he didn't want me to talk to anyone about it except for Brad and him. I wasn't allowed to talk to my other mentors. I wasn't allowed to talk to my best friends. I absolutely was not allowed to talk to my parents about it. So I'm feeling this level of pressure and anxiety and I'm freaking out. And at one point, when he told me, like, I don't see the point in you waiting, I was going over to a girls' night at my friend's house who was married to my ex-boyfriend. And when I get there, I'm sitting on her couch and she said, hey, how are you doing? And she's like, I just wanted to check in because I heard that her husband, name redacted, is going to be taking over your ministry. And
So he had already had something set up. Yeah.
what do you mean? And she's, since you're going to be moving on to Brad's church because you're going to move into blah, 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 blah. She starts telling me this whole scenario that I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody about. And I looked at her and I was just shocked. And I was like, I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone about that. What do you mean he already talked to your husband and he's already given my ministry to your husband? And she's, oh, I didn't know that you didn't know that. And I was like, no, nothing's been decided yet. So he already had lined up someone to take her. And I went home, I had a full mental breakdown. And I started crying and I like was staring off at a wall for hours. It was like if you've ever seen the movie Twilight when she's like sitting in the chair and the seasons just change around her. That's exactly the way that I can describe. I had like a full dissociative episode. And at one point I was like on my bed in my room and my parents and Brad all walk into the room to come check on me and I like jumped up on the mattress and I had backed myself into the corner and I was like holding the wall sobbing. Randomly my dad, and you would think that my parents like somehow conspired to do this, but they don't talk. My dad messaged me, was like, hey, I'm gonna be in Roseville. Do you want to go get lunch? And I was like, yeah. So I sit down and like sobbing and telling him the whole thing. And we agree that I was gonna go spend a couple days at his house. I'm having this whole mental episode, called out of work because I was working part-time at Walgreens at the time. And I'm freaking out. And then my parents sit me down and they said, we're putting our foot down. This isn't normal. This isn't okay. You are no longer doing courtship under Dan. John will take over. And he said, you know what my rules are? Do what you think is right. Let me know if you want to talk. I'm here if you need advice. I'm here if you have any issues. If you have a fight and you need like someone, I'll be here. Just go be adults and love. Do the
Mhm.
thing. Be 22.
Yeah.
And so I finally reached out and I was like, you know what, Dan, of course I spoke to him much more respectfully then. And I was like, you're right. I don't see the point in waiting. And also, I'm going to have John take over the courtship. We're going to move into phase 2. And as we move into phase 2, John's going to be in charge from here on out. And he's okay. Let's talk about a timeline of you like transferring your ministry stuff over and tell me what phase 2 is going to look like for you. New text. You know what? Now that you're not under my rule, that's between you and your covering. So it was like very strategic. Oh, let me guide you. Oh, wait, no, you don't want me to guide you. And did that. At that point, I'm having my mental break and I'm struggling and I'm losing my mind. And this is all the week before Brad was supposed to have his surgery. This
Mhm.
lining up. This is 5 days before his surgery. So Sunday morning rolls around and I am so unwell and I decide not to go to church. And this was like one of the very rare occurrences where I didn't have any ministry responsibilities that Sunday. I didn't have to be in the sound booth. I didn't have anything to do. So I just didn't show up. Usually I would go to one service there and then go to one service at Brad's church so that I could do both. And we only went to Brad's church. No one called me. No one texted me. No one checked to see why I wasn't there. In the years that I had been there, I can count on one hand the amount of Sundays that I missed that weren't for a ministry reason. So it was very odd that I would miss a Sunday and not ask for permission to Sunday and plan it out and schedule it and everything. So I just didn't show up and no one even mentioned it. And then Mondays we had off. That was our only day off in the week. And then Tuesday rolls around and Dina calls me and says, "Hey, I have your details for the fundraiser that you're leaving on Friday. Your flight info just got emailed to you." And I stop her. And I said, "Dina, I can't go on that fundraiser. I can't be," because I was supposed to lead it. I was going to be in charge of like 12 people, making sure they get to work on time, making sure they get food, get transportation, everything. They were going to drive my car there. I was going to meet them there and I was going to drive back. And I was like, "I can't do it." And she said, "What?" And I said, "I am having really bad anxiety. I can't leave the house. I'm not okay. I can't be in charge of the team." And she's, "Alisha, what's going on?" And I said, "I can't talk about it." Because mind you, Dan had told me I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody about it. And I was still like under that. And I was like, "I can't talk about it." And she's, "Alisha, what's going on?" And I said, and we had previously been roommates, like best friends at one point. And I was like, "Dina, I'm not okay." And she goes, "You're scaring me." And I said, "You should be." She's, "Okay, I'm going to talk to the staff. I'll call you back." I said, "Okay." An hour later, I got a text message saying, pending an explanation, I was removed from all my ministry roles. That the staff was shocked and confused by why I had abandoned all my ministry responsibilities without so much as a text to him, why I was doing the things that I was doing, especially after all the years of the passion and sacrifice that you've given us. Now you've turned and done this. And I'm reading this text message. And on one hand, I'm like, everything I know is gone. And on the other hand, I had this huge sense of relief, like at least from something that I didn't know that I was under. What I didn't know at the time, and I luckily found out the next day, is before they pressed send on that message, they brought in all of my peers, my students, the first year master's commission students that I was helping train, all of them. They brought them into Dan's office and they said, "Do you know where Alisha is? We're very concerned. We're worried. We don't know where she is or what she's doing. No one can get a hold of her." Basically, this narrative of I've run away, that they suspect I was running off to move in with my boyfriend, that I probably just wanted to go party and have sex. and that they were concerned and scared for my well-being.
Wow.
And everyone was like, I was talking to her yesterday. What do you mean? This is out of nowhere. And
Mhm.
they're like, we don't know where she is. So this whole narrative of I ran away begins. And I sent back a text message basically saying, you know what, I'll accept what you're saying. And this isn't how I ever wanted to go. And this is the hardest thing that's ever happened to me. No longer being a part of this church is going to be one of the hardest decisions I ever take. But I hope you all know that me saying yes to this has nothing to do with me being led astray by anyone. I'm not leaving ministry. I'm just going to say, okay. And I love you guys, whatever. So a few weeks later, he posts on Facebook, we just want to thank everyone or we just want to say thank you publicly to Alisha for everything that she gave us over the years of service here. She's moving on, and changed the narrative. And it was just like this weird, awkward, like message. She's gone. She left. Just in case anybody's asking, she's gone. And I basically told him, I was like, when he texted me, my response was like, I'll connect with you about how to get all of my ministry files, my keys. And they only would allow me to meet with the one person on staff that I did not get along with. We had butt heads for years and never got along. Now we're great friends because we're both out of it and no longer being pit against each other. And they wouldn't let me meet with any of the staff members, only this one intern girl who had no idea what was going on. They said, meet her at the church at 11 o'clock on Wednesday and give her everything. So I gave her like my hard drive, I gave her my keys, and she didn't even know what was going on. And I left, and that was the end of my time at Church of the Harvest.
Wow. I'm so glad you got out of there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I used to work like 16-hour days for them daily, and then I was only allowed to work a regular job 1 to 2 days a week, and I was trying to survive on 3 jobs. I would work like 3 different jobs between my like off time, and I would just do like doubles and try to pay rent with that.
Because you weren't paid at Church of the Harvest.
If I did a fundraiser, then I could keep part of it. On the fundraisers, we would work for $12 an hour, and then after the expenses were taken off of that, whatever was left over, I would split with the church. So I was making like $2 an hour on those fundraisers.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good shit. You know, hearing you talk, and I love that you share this story. I feel like you led a version of my life that I really could have been. I've told Jenny this. I could have been really great in a cult. I would have done well, except for right at the beginning when you had to go tell those guys about Jesus and minister them in the dark by the dumpster. I struggle with that stuff, and so I would have exited out then. But
Oh, they took that right out of you. Don't worry.
oh no, I grew up like I get really nervous to asking people if you want to ask Jesus in your heart. And so to have to do that to 2 men by a dumpster in the dark would have been terrifying. I love that you're out of it now. You're out, and I'm gonna guess not with Brad.
No, so we had our first kiss a year after that.
It's probably weird.
So the thing about Brad, he went through this whole midlife crisis shortly after that, and I was going through my own identity crisis through all this. He and I started researching a lot of other religions. So the job that he had, he was able to sit for 12-hour shifts and play on his phone the whole time. He would watch YouTube videos all day long about religions and research them. He would cycle through religion to religion about 1 a week. Finally, he landed on Jediism.
It's just like from one cult to the next. Some people just
Yeah.
never get out of the mindset. Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, so good. So you got out of that cult and then you got out of that person, which was good too. And so now you're doing great, right? So I have to know, are you involved in any kind of organized religion at this point? No.
I think one of the biggest things that is like crazy for me is that I don't discount the things that I experienced in the Pentecostal church. I know I didn't make this stuff up. I saw healings. I saw people speaking in tongues. I saw works and like signs and wonders. Some of it was not real. I can logically understand that. But there are things that I experienced in my own life, my own experience. Like when I was in India, I had this one-on-one moment with God. And I genuinely know that moment that I was with God, it was real. And the
Mhm.
message that I got that changed my perspective on religion, and it was literally the message. Like I say it like it's this big thing. I felt God look down at these people in a Sikh temple and think, "Ah, I love them."
Good.
And everyone that I was with was like, "Oh, they're going to hell, and that's so
Mhm.
sad." And I was like, "I'm
Mhm.
confused." And now it's like something like the glass shattered. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I don't believe in salvation the way it was taught to me." And
Mhm.
now this all really added into the crisis of Dan and the courtship is happening. And I'm like questioning Christianity at its core in the Bible. So I separated myself. Brad and I go through all these like things. I got really into yoga for a minute. Yoga really helped me center myself and like connect. And what I landed on is I believe in divinity. And if you want to call that God, if you want to call that Allah, if you want to call that fill in the blank, divinity is real. And when you look into the scientific examples of things that happen biblically, there is one correlation that keeps going back and forth, and it's light. I genuinely believe that light and love are synonymous at its core. And if you look at the truth of DNA and molecules, when they break down what is holding everything together, it is literally light in its purest form. And I think that connecting source is light, it is love. That is the same thing as God. That is the same thing as divinity. And I think that it exists. It's keeping us all together. And to the best of our ability, if we seek out light and love, then we will, by proxy, become better people and thus do the things that the Bible teaches.
Mhm.
That is how we become the way that Jesus talked about. That is how we embody what the church was meant to be. I believe that organized religion is exactly what Jesus warned us about. It's when he walked into the temple and flipped tables and whipped people and said, "What are you doing? This isn't the heart of God." That is what I believe in. I believe in the table flipping Jesus. And whether or not he was born immaculate, whether or not he was raised on the third day, I genuinely don't think that it matters. And that is 20 years ago, me would die if I ever heard myself say that. The point is to embody love and let that light and love be who you are at your core. And that's God to me. That's divinity. That's the spaghetti monster in the sky. That is the point of it all.
I love that. That is your ministry. Like it's still, and that's beautiful. And I love that you're still involved in that, spilling the Kool-Aid and just sharing these amazing stories that I feel so honored that you joined us here today to be able to talk about this stuff. It's amazing. And I love that you did it live on TikTok too.
The most beautiful things that has happened through this is that I've had, I think I need to count the actual number, but it's in the range of 10 to 15 people who previously attended Church of the Harvest that have
Yeah,
reached out to say thank you. You have put words
good.
to my abuse. You have
Yeah, good.
told me that I'm not the only one that went through this. Oh my God, I thought I was crazy. They've reached out with such positive responses and thanked me for speaking out. And again, like I said, my purpose in all this spilling the Kool-Aid is to help people who have experienced this know that there is hope, that know that you're not a bad person for not believing the Bible anymore. You're still okay. It's
Mhm.
okay.
Alicia, remind everyone again where they can find you on social media and hear more about your story more in depth.
So right now I started my biggest push on TikTok and I am spilling the Kool-Aid, all one word, exactly how it sounds. I also have an account on Instagram where I'm posting that stuff as well if you're not on TikTok. I have a blog that I don't really upkeep, but I'd like to eventually do that. Stay tuned because I really want to start my own podcast and I really want to write a book. Spilling the Kool-Aid is going to be the idea. So if you search up Spilling the Kool-Aid, you should be able to find me.
Healing is a process, a journey to be experienced, not just a destination.
You are not alone in this. It's okay to take your time, explore different perspectives, and find what resonates with you. Healing takes courage, and we believe in you.
Together, we can enjoy the ride.